Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Big Rican on Sports podcast. I am your host. I am the Big Rican. Today is Saturday, February 20th, 2021. Big week this week. On a personal note, with all the pandemic stuff going on, I got a very nice gift on Thursday, and we went to an independent imaging lab, and I got to see pictures and also hear my soon-to-be little guy's heartbeat on Thursday. So this week has been really cool. Normally, for me, Wednesday, when the Mets reported to spring training, would be the highlight of any week for me, but absolutely not after Thursday. Too much snow. Need to get out of the Northeast. So this week's episode, we got a couple of different things we're going to jump on. Mostly Browns and Mets this week. I will come to you next week. I will do the Cavs episode. Really getting into the first half of the season. It's been pretty rough for the boys in wine and gold recently. So going to have to dive into the Cavs. But tonight is going to be all about the New York Mets and the Cleveland Browns. So why the mix? Because there's a lot of stuff that's been going on. A lot of stuff that's been happening, especially in the NFL hot stove. And let's start there with a non-Brown story. And that is the massive trade that went down just the other day. Carson Wentz to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2021 third-round pick and a conditional pick in 2022. Now, that conditional pick can turn into it's a second, but can turn into a first if he plays 75% of the snaps or if he plays 70% of the snaps and they go to the playoffs. My take on this? Philly got hosed. Philly got hosed hard. Look, for all the things you can say about Carson Wentz, if you go back to the Super Bowl year, when they won, he was the MVP of the league before the injury. And the injury happened on a play where he was trying to make a play. You know what? It's too hot for the hat. So, yes, he is a good quarterback. Remember, the guy who turned him into Carson Wentz was Frank Reich, who's the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. There's been a lot of things going around saying that Frank Reich last year wanted Phillip Rivers as opposed to Tom Brady. I think he knew that this could be coming down, especially after the drafting of Jalen Hurts by Philadelphia in the second round last year. So what does this mean now? Well, in my opinion, I think it shifts the balance of power a little bit in the AFC South. Joey from Cleveland, Tone's brother, I think you got a good guy here, and I think Frank Reich's going to be the one that can turn him around, and I think this is a way you guys can win a division title next year, even with Tennessee still having their big stud back in Derrick Henry. Sorry, I looked down. One of the cats are down here looking for a little love, so figured I'd do two things at once. Also, on the football side, and now we get into the Browns and the big one, and that is the release of J.J. Watt by the Houston Texans. J.J. Watt was an absolute monster in Houston for a lot of years, but not just on the field with his production and the amount of attention he required from different offensive coordinators and different O-line coaches. J.J. Watt helped rebuild Houston after the hurricane. He's a Walter Payton Man of the Year, very much deserving. He is a good dude on and off the field, and he is still a highly productive defensive end. So here's where we get into what the Cleveland Browns should do, and it's very simple. Throw as much as you can at J.J. Watt. Make J.J. Watt your top priority in the offseason. Because let's think of it this way. The defensive deficiencies the Cleveland Browns had last year started in the secondary. But what makes your secondary better? An elite pass rush. With Myles Garrett on one end and J.J. Watt on the other and Sheldon Richardson in the middle, you have the makings of an elite pass rush. That would make the secondary that much easier in their job. Plus, hopefully, you get Grant Delpit back and you get Greedy Williams back to play and be healthy this year. You're talking about a first-round talent corner who fell to the second round and a first-round talent safety who fell deep into the draft. Both guys did not play a snap this year. So this could be the one move. I think you need some linebacker help, but you can get that in draft Baron Browning. But again, I'm an Ohio State guy, so I'm going to say Baron Browning. I think if you get J.J. Watt, a lot of the issues in the back end that are non-health related can take care of themselves, because now quarterbacks will have to look at both sides. Because that's Myles Garrett. That's maybe the best defensive end in the league on one end, and J.J. Watt, who may be at the end of his career, but is still a prime performer. J.J. Watt was the most double-teamed guy in the league last year, so everybody's like, oh, you need more than 5 sacks. Well, if you had 2 dudes on you every 35, I think it was 30% of the snaps, that you played, you got problems. And then you played teams like the Browns who had an elite offensive line. You're not going to get to the quarterback against an elite offensive line. So here, he's the best. The Browns are the best fit for him, because I think the Browns are 1 or 2 pieces away from being a Super Bowl contender. I think a lot of the issues Kansas City has had were exposed in the Super Bowl and the beating they took. They are thin at offensive line. They don't really have a running game. So if they have to play ball control, they can't do it. They are explosive when Patrick Mahomes has time. But when he's making throws like the guy on my shirt, when he would field a bunt in his prime, that's not good. Not good at all. So I think JJ's best spot could be the Browns. Now, the one other place he could go is Chicago. And people are kind of going like this. Why the Bears? His wife plays professional soccer in Chicago. Listen, as much as his brothers and him together would be a very good story, Pittsburgh has serious salary cap issues, and they also have other issues they need to address before adding a pass rusher. The Pouncey twins, one of which was their center, retired. Their offensive line, by and large, is getting old. They don't know who their quarterback is going to be. Because I think he's done. But that's just me. Sorry, one of the other cats just decided to take out a pillow. Anyways, the other big thing with the Cleveland Browns is all these ideas floating. Do they trade Odell? Do they get draft capital by trading Odell? Now hear this. Do not, I repeat, forcefully, do not trade Odell Beckham Jr. Because now you have seen what the offense can be without him. You have seen, and I believe he will buy in, to a run-heavy, play-action-heavy offense with a great offensive line. This team was one possession from the AFC Championship game, and I think they would have absolutely blasted the Buffalo Bills. They were literally, in my opinion, one possession from the Super Bowl. I don't know if anybody beats Tampa in that Super Bowl in their building, but they're one possession from the Super Bowl. Odell needs to stay, because now you make that wide receiver room that much deeper. Hollywood Higgins, who had his biggest year ever, is now your number 3. DPJ is your number 4. You do not have to retain Kadero Hodge. You can go get someone in the draft that's going to be cheaper and younger. Jarvis is Jarvis. This is what your wide receiver room needs to look like, especially since you have David Njoku, who you can trade and get some draft capital. You have an emerging Harrison Bryant, who I believe will be the tight end of the future. You have Austin Hooper, who was very, very good this past season. Odell needs to stay. I think Andrew Berry would make his first big mistake as Browns general manager if he traded Odell. So now let's get to my favorite thing, and I'm going to put the hat back on. On Wednesday morning, I awoke to sunshine. I awoke to birds chirping. I awoke to one of the greatest days on any calendar, and that is the day that the pitchers and catchers for the New York Mets report to Port St. Lucie and start that drive for title number 3. We got some other news Mets related this week. Tim Tebow has decided to retire from Major League Baseball. Well, professional baseball. He never made it to the big leagues. I will say this about Tim Tebow. He took the bus rides. He played when he was in the lineup, and he took care of his teammates when he wasn't. He played hard. He played the game right. He did not take any shortcuts from being Tim Tebow and having money to do things. He did it right. And I have to tell you, tip of the cap to Tebow. He did it right. He played the game hard, but his heart wasn't in it. And he's got other things he's going to pursue. I mean, the guy's great. He was great at college at Florida in football. He's a really good analyst. Now, as I put something over here. Can't buy one. Now, anybody who watches ESPN for college football, and I don't watch it much because I'm sick and tired of the SEC talk, but anybody who watches Tim Tebow break down a game on ESPN, he's very, very good at it. It's not something that he takes for granted. It is not something he doesn't work at, because he does work at it. So good luck to Tebow. I wish him the best. I hope to see him again on TV on Saturdays, giving us information about college football, because let me tell you something. There's only a few guys on that network that I trust information from when it comes to college football, and an insight I trust from guys when it comes to college football. Tebow's one of them. It's really Tebow, Herbstreit, Corso, and Fowler, and Reese Davis. So there's 5. Fox, it's everybody, including the guy who's not there anymore, in Urban Meyer. So now that we get through Tebow, we are talking about the 2021 New York Mets, who had, in my opinion, an offseason that if I had to grade it, was a B+. Now, there are a lot of people on Mets Twitter who would tell me, you're crazy, they didn't spend money, they didn't do this. Well, all the New York Mets did this offseason was upgrade at catcher, bring in the best shortstop in the game, bring in a middle to top of the rotation starter that has flown under the radar in Carlos Carrasco. They have added depth pieces in Kevin Pillar, in Albert Almora. Real quick about Almora. I want to show the shirt I'm wearing right now. And there's a reason I'm wearing this shirt. This is my Thank You David Wright t-shirt. The reason I'm wearing it tonight is I actually just finished reading the David Wright book. It's called The Captain of Memoir. Him and Anthony DiComo from MLB.com wrote it together. And I can tell you this right now. If you are a Met fan, this is a must-read. This and Brian Wright's new all-time All-Star book. I've read them both over the summer, between the summer and now. This team can do things. If they get to where I think they can get this year, it will break my heart that this guy's not on the team. I finished it literally in 2.5 days. I remarked to my mother-in-law, I miss him. And I do. I miss the captain terribly. We are now in September, it will be 3 years since he played his final game in the big leagues. I have watched the clips from it this week after reading the book, and it's still surreal to have a player of that caliber, of where he was going. Because let's remember this. Before the injuries, David Wright was on pace for nearly 3,000 hits, 300 home runs, nearly 1,000 RBIs, multiple Gold Gloves. He was a 7-time All-Star. He is one of 3 third basemen all time to go 30-30. I think he's got a strong case of Cooperstown, but I'm a Met fan, so I'm biased. So that's why I got the shirt on. And I read the book. So let's get back into the Mets. So this offseason, you bring in James McCann. Brian McCann's the old Brave. You make the deal for Francisco Lindor and for Cookie Carrasco. You, by extension and by suspension, move Jeff McNeil back to his natural position as second base because of the stupidity of Robinson Cano. And then you make the depth moves that you did that were very smart. Jordan Yamamoto, good young pitcher. Joey Lucchesi, good young pitcher, left-handed. You get the three pitchers that are almost ready for the big leagues for Steven Matz from Toronto. You then this week bring in Taijuan Walker to help fill out that rotation until June 1st. And what happens June 1st? The God of Thunder himself will be ready. That's right, kids. Thor is more than on his way to being in the rotation by June 1. He's been putting up stuff on Instagram and Twitter. He is throwing absolute bullets. He's free and easy. His mechanics have not changed. His arm slot has not been affected by the surgery. So here's what the Mets look like 1 through 5 on opening day. You know who's getting the ball on April 1st. That's easy. That's the best pitcher in the game, and that is Jacob deGrom. MLB Network did the top 100 players right now. Big Jake came in at number 3, only behind Mike Trout, who may be one of the best all time, and Mookie Betts. The 2-hole in this rotation can be flip-flopped. I think they're going to go with Marcus Stroman in the 2. You could go with Cookie in the 2. Whichever one's not the 2 is going to be the 3. Now it's where you have some depth. In the 4 spot, it's going to be Taijuan Walker. You're going to pencil him in right behind either Cookie or Stroman, depending on who's ready to go. By the way, I think it's going to be Stroman in the 2, because then Stroman would be in line to pitch the home opener on April 8th. And he's a New York kid. So deGrom 1, easiest pick in the world. Stroman 2, Cookie 3, Taijuan Walker slides into the 4, and then you have your choice of 3 guys for that one final spot. Or if you go 6-man rotation, you have 2 spots for 3 guys. And that's Peterson, who was very good as a rookie last year from the left side. Good sink, decent in the top of the zone, had a decent off-speed stuff. Will get better as time goes on. Jordan Yamamoto, who I saw one time last year, good secondary stuff. He doesn't throw overly hard like the rest of that rotation does, but he has good secondary stuff. He can build off of that, and with a better defensive lineup that the Mets can field this year, he can pitch to contact, something I think him and Stroman are going to have to do. And then you have Joey Lucchesi, or Lucchesi, I think he pronounces it. I don't know much about him. And I have to do some homework before I give you the full Mets preview that I'm going to do probably close to the end of March. I'll do that. But I think he could be pretty good. Hard throwing lefty from what I understand. So I told you I gave him a B+ for the offseason. Here's why it's not an A. I really feel like they should have gotten George Springer. That would answer all the questions the Mets had going into this offseason. Now, with the depth that they acquired in Kevin Pillar, who can play all 3 outfield spots, 2 of the 3 to Gold Glove level. Albert Almora, and here's why I stopped with Almora before. It says on the Mets website that he's wearing number 5. The rage that burned within me when I saw that. No disrespect to Almora, 5 needs to hang from the left field corner, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later. No one but the captain should ever wear 5 again. Rant over. So they did the top 10 right now at each position, did MLB Network. And this is where all the Mets players ranked. At catcher, McCann ranks at number 10. At first base, Alonso ranks number 7. They are calling Jeff McNeil the second best second baseman in the game. That's mostly offensively, to be very honest. Lindor's at 4. Behind Tatis and Carlos Correa and Trevor Story. I'll take it. J.D. Davis is not ranked at third base. That's a position I think they could upgrade at. Dom Smith is the number 6 left fielder. Brandon Nimmo is the number 5 center fielder. Michael Conforto's number 7 as a right fielder. As far as the overall 100 rankings, McCann wasn't on there. Alonso was at 66. McNeil and Conforto were 34 and 35. Lindor was at number 10, and Jacob deGrom was number 3. This roster's loaded, and I don't think people understand because they didn't make bigger splashes. This roster is loaded. They do have some question marks. With Seth Lugo not being able to go out of the gate because of elbow surgery, the Mets need help in the bullpen. There are guys left over. You still have Gesellman. You still have Familia. You still have Betances. You brought in that Loop kid from Tampa. You bring in Trevor May. So they have some answers in camp. You have some of the young kids in the system who could do well. 2 of the guys in the Mats deal, I think they could turn into relievers if they're smart. The bench, you have the good guys for the outfield right now in Almora and Pilar. I don't know. I mean, the infield bench, Tomas Nido is going to back up James McCann. But the one name that has interested me all year is a kid by the name of Khalil Lee. Now, the Mets, Royals, and Red Sox did a big 3-team deal where the Mets got Khalil Lee. Benintendi went to Kansas City. People went to Boston. Khalil Lee is in the top 15 prospects in all of baseball. Or top 50, excuse me. Good power. Will hit for average. But where he is better as an all-around player is in center field. He can fly. He's got a cannon for an arm. And they think he's going to hit. If I put my GM hat on and I'm in the front office with Sandy and these boys, I'm thinking I'm looking to trade Nimmo or platoon him in a corner. Maybe Khalil Lee is going to be the answer, and that's why they haven't signed Jackie Bradley. Lots to come. We are only Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We are 4 days in. They don't start playing spring training games until March the 1st. So a week from Monday, they start playing spring training games. They got the Marlins. Big shock. The Marlins. They see him 19 times a year, and they see him 50 times in spring training. I will do a Mets preview where I will make my picks for each division. Actually, no. I will do a full Mets preview, and then when I have the boys back on somewhere in the middle of March, we will go through and predict who we think is going to win each division and which teams are going to be the wild cards going in for 2021. As I mentioned, next week I will bring you the Cleveland Cavaliers episode. Boy, has it been rough recently. It has been rough recently. So that's those guys there. Lots of stuff going on. You got the NBA All-Star Game coming up. They're starting all the process on the draft. I do plan on having a Big Rican first annual mock NFL draft. That will be a live event because the draft is in Cleveland this year, so I feel I have to represent. So we're going to do some breakdowns of stuff offline, obviously, and then we'll get into the draft as it gets closer. So we're going to have our first mock draft this year. We're going to get into, we got recruiting and off-season program for Ohio State we're going to get into. Because this year, for the first time in a long time, well, actually the first time in 3 years, there's going to be a competition for quarterback. Last competition gave up 2 first-rounders in Dwayne Haskins and Joe Burrow. This year, it's C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller. With the returning wide receiver core, which is elite. The returning tight end core, which is elite. New running backs. The offensive line is mostly underclassmen, which is elite. Defense needs some help. Alabama showed us that. So as always, Big Rican can be found as a proud member of the TimesSkew Podcast Network at timeskew.com. These guys are already putting out fantasy football stuff for next year. So if anybody's big into fantasy football, TimesSkew is the place to go. These guys know everything about fantasy football. I'm even going to get back into it, but they're going to help me draft my team. On YouTube here at Big Rican on Sports, on Facebook Big Rican on Sports, on Twitter at Big Rican on Sport, Spotify, Google, Anchor, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and of course at timeskewed.com. It's baseball season, everybody. It's a happier day. Have a great week. I will see you guys next weekend. Enjoy and keep the snow away. Let's go Mets.